Welcome to my latest project. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to prepare this piece of watercolour paper with a little bit of masking fluid. I'm just going to splash it on because I want a sort of speckled effect in the background of this piece. I apologise for not having been here for a little while, but unfortunately this time of year sees me busy with pet portraits and Christmas markets, so there's been very little time to fit much else in. However, while I was working, I realised I haven't really played with anything for some time, so this is a nice interval for me, working with watercolours, and these are watercolour inks, and I'm also going to add a little extra element towards the end. So using this beautiful colour of blue, sky blue, wetting the paper and just allowing it to run and to do what it wants to do. This is going to be very much an abstract sort of landscape scene, but it's going to have something a little bit different in it, hopefully. So adding a different shade of blue, slightly deeper, and then going in with this lovely sort of indigo blue, which is really beautiful. I want to create a sort of wintry, late autumn scene, so I'm choosing colours that I associate with that time of year, really, sort of coldish colours. And I'm just using a wet brush just to move that paint around, that ink around. But I also want to lift some out. So wetting the brush and then drying it on a piece of kitchen towel enables you to lift out spaces. It creates a sort of very easy cloud effect. And it also means you can take, if there's too much water or ink, you can lift that out and stop it from making puddles, because nobody likes cauliflowers or puddles on their paper. And obviously you can move the paint around a little bit more, move the ink, spread it out and soften it. And now wintry skies often have a sort of pinky shade to them, so I'm putting in this really delicate, pretty pink. Again, watercolour ink, it's Ecoline, and I'm just going to lift out some of that moisture again, make some more little cloud effects. That's nice. And then we're going to go in with get a bit darker. If you start with the lighter colours, you can add the darker in. If you start with dark, it's very difficult to take that out. So build up in your colour range with the palest first and then work up to the darker shades. And just with this lovely flat brush, I'm just going to pull that blue along. You can see it's actually staining quite quickly into the paper, so you need to keep it moving and make it do what you want it to do. Now I'm going in with this lovely sort of bright green, which I know isn't very wintry, but it's interesting. Now watch what happens when I add the gold acrylic ink to the watercolour ink. See how it reacts, and it actually pushes the ink, it repels it. Fascinating effect which you can use to your benefit. Now I'm adding a slightly darker, again, acrylic ink. So this is a nice sap green, and I'm just pulling it up, making those little sort of tree shapes and pulling it into the wet area above, so it then produces a cauliflower that we actually want. And now I'm using just a pipette with clean water, and I'm just pulling that along, dropping the water and moving the inks into sort of lines and planes, so that then I can wet it with the just pure tap water in this spray and let it run and make interesting shapes beneath that horizon line. Now I'm adding in the dark indigo again, which is going to balance with the colours in the top, in the sky, and then into the dark brown, because we need to add some darker areas, especially in winter there's a lot of brown. But we're going to make this shimmer with adding the gold acrylic ink again. Remember, this is just playing. We are just having some fun. We're having a break from perhaps work that we've been doing. Certainly for me, this is just something to help me to keep my sort of painting hand in instead of doing all the detail work that I'm on. Now with the fine liner, I'm just adding a few little twig effects, little branches, pulling the wet ink into different shapes. Take some ink out of a different place if you want and pull it. Just add what you feel, little grasses, twiddly bits as I would call it, but they add the detail and they give it a little bit of realism. And remember, you can add some in that mid-ground as well. And now still with the thin liner, I'm pulling some of these other colours and again adding more twiddly bits. Okay, in this bottom right hand corner I just want to add a little bit of a foreground tree just to give it context. I've allowed this to completely dry. I actually taped it down to this board overnight just while it dried, just because I want to now work flat with the soft pastels that I'm going to add in. First I need to take out this masking fluid here, and we can now see some of the little shapes. So these are Inscribe soft pastels, not oil pastels. These are sort of chalk pastels, if you like. These come in a lovely selection of colours, and for me this is just a nice size to work with. So I'm picking the sorts of greens and colours that we've already used, and I want to start adding soft sort of details to these trees. I don't want them to be the sort of hard brown shapes that we've got. So I'm using the greens, the turquoise, anything that I feel will blend with the colours that we've already used, just to add little details. It's softening things up. It gives the format because you've got the brown that gives the shape of the tree, but we're adding little bits of detail. And now I'm going in with a really lovely warm brown colour, just to start to warm this scene up a little bit. We don't want it too warm because it is supposed to be wintry, but at the same time I don't want it to be cold and empty. So using browns, using a yellow, we can start to build colours. And now with a very, very pale blue, it's really nice to soften around the skyline. Some of those turquoisey shapes can be just softened that little bit more. And we can pull that down into that mid-ground area, start to make it look a little bit more like water or reflection in a sort of marshy area. And then we can add, and it covers mistakes. This is one thing I want you to know, that you can actually cover mistakes with pastels if you've used watercolours. Not that we have mistakes, we have challenges, but sometimes we do stuff and we think, oh no, I could really do to cover that, what do I do it with? So soft pastels make an excellent sort of cover and blend that you can use. I'm going to add a little bit more pink into that sky because I think we can get away with it at this time of year. So I'm blending it with my finger. We have a little bit of a tooth on this paper, which means it will actually take quite a bit of the pastel colour if we brush it over the surface without it disappearing or blocking the paper. So again, I'm putting that pink and then a little bit of white so that I can blend it and soften it. We don't want it too harsh. Again, rubbing it with my finger. You check that your finger is cleanish before you do that. Now working into this foreground, I want to add some lovely dark blues. Obviously, the nearer things are to you, the darker they are. So you can get away with adding the depth in this area. We've got some browns, but I do like adding a navy blue in. Just gives extra depth rather than black. It adds interest, it adds depth, but it doesn't deaden the picture. And now we've got a yellow ochre, and I'm just adding little bits of twiddles, covering up some of the white spaces that we don't need to be quite so large. And that lovely burnt orange colour, just adding that little bit of warmth, as if the sun was catching it, a little bit of winter sun there. And you can blend and smooth as much as you like, or you can leave it as sort of drawn twigs, whatever you like. It will add a magnificent texture to your painting. Just softening that beautiful blue in. And of course, sometimes where it hits the yellow that we've just put on, it'll make a lovely shade of green as well. So it just really blends nicely. And again, I'm adding a little bit of that frosty blue, a little bit of softening, a little bit of coolness, taking it into different areas, adding highlights, blending, just really enjoying the general process of putting this together. And now this is it. I have actually finished what I wanted to do. As you can see, we've got lots of little twiddles, we've got some depth, we've got that foreground tree, we've got some lovely areas with different colours, and I'm happy with the effects. I could do more, I could do lots more detail, but I want to keep this fairly loose. And we can see our little birds there. I've just gone underneath those with a little pastel to pick them out. So now as I'm taking this masking tape off, and what I want to show you is when we move this at an angle, we can still see the gold shimmer that was created with the beautiful gold acrylic ink. Although we can't see it flat on, when the light catches it, you will see that beautiful gold at the base of everything. So I hope that you feel inspired that you can actually use watercolours and soft pastels to create really interesting abstract landscapes or projects. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will really look forward to seeing you for another project, hopefully very soon. Keep painting. Bye for now.